For those of you who didn't hear, I was literally driving with this in one hand and I had the steering wheel in the other. This is how I was coming here like a crazy man for this presentation. All right. You all know me. I'm Andy. My business is More Signings. And so I'm going to tell you just a few things about my business and maybe my career. And then share with you a couple of lessons learned. And some of them are very appropriate to this group. And then what I call challenges and opportunities for the future. And because we have some seasoned veterans, entrepreneurs in this room, I'm going to actually share where I'm at with my business and maybe open it up for suggestions or thoughts, you know. And so I thought that might be a good way to end because I value all of your input. So the two components of my business. I've been a part-time educator for 21 years. By accident, by the way. I never deliberately got into that. I just happened to kind of stumble my way into teaching. And it was something that when I was taking in my master's program, everybody in my study group said, hey, I want to get into teaching. And I was the only guy in the group that said, I do not want to teach. I want to make money with this degree that I'm getting. Nobody else taught. I'm the guy that ended up teaching. So go figure. So been doing that for 21 years. I still really like it. And then I started my business. So I was in the corporate world for most of my career, almost the whole 40 years. And then I really had a big desire to go off on my own. So last year is when I really went full time on my own. So I've got education and I've got my business there.
What do you teach?
I teach generally more marketing classes, and some of the business classes I do some more undergrad than grad, but occasionally I do some grad classes, and I'll share that here in a minute too. So these are the three institutions that I currently teach at right now. This is Golden West, and if you haven't been by Golden West lately, they have refreshed that campus and are still refreshing that campus with a lot of new buildings. So I don't know if you guys remember, but maybe 5-6 years ago, there was a state bond that was on the ballot to improve community college campuses. It was billions of dollars, and it ended up getting passed. And so a lot of the community colleges have had money now to, rebuild, add to their campuses and all that stuff. And so Golden West Community College, which was built in the 60s, by the way, it really needed a refresh. But so they've got some amazing new facilities over there. So that's one of them. The other one, this one here in the middle, is called University of La Verne. University of La Verne is a private university. As you can see, maybe from that picture, it also has like a small Ivy League, looking campus, and they have both online and, and traditional, what I would call four-year campus on-ground classes out there. But if you listen to the radio, you will hear they have a lot of commercials for adult learners who are working adults. And so they have night schools, what we've always known that as night school, right? So they have a lot of programs for that. And they're rated pretty high, actually, in Southern California. They have several campuses out there, and they do both what we call online, live online learning, which is I might teach a class like on Wednesday nights from 5:30 to 8:30 or something like that. And people are all over the place. They're up in Santa Clarita, they're in Burbank, they're in Los Angeles, they might even be, in Orange County. But they're working adults. So they offer both. And then the last one here, I just, again, accidentally got into this one, is Chapman University. And Chapman University is sort of like a mini USC, if you will. It's a private university. They've got a lot of big funding donors that have added to that campus. And so it is very much a traditional four-year learning institution where people come and, they come to classes. And for me, that was a real treat because for the last 3.5 years, I have not had a live class. Because of the pandemic, of course, everything had to move to Zoom online. Some of my classes are what's called asynchronous, meaning somebody logs on, class begins Monday and it ends Sunday night. And they have exercises, and I've recorded lectures or exercises for them to do. So my touch with the student has been very, very removed, and it's a very different thing. So the thing about Golden West, again, the irony is build all these new buildings, beautiful campus, but 50 to 60%, okay, of those classes are online. So we got new facilities, but only half the utilization that you would have normally expected. And it's because education is changing right now. And so a lot of students cannot take off a Tuesday night for a class now. They're working, and if they're in the community college track, let's just say. So new buildings, but only half the utilization. It's kind of a strange thing. We're still serving the community though. And so I brought this up deliberately because Paul presented a couple months ago, and remember he was talking about you went to, I think, Orange Coast College and then into USC.
I did.
The community college program is such a fantastic program because it's affordable. It helps a lot of people who can get into the four-year institution and get a 4-year degree by getting a lot of their first preliminary classes, maybe your first 2 years, handled here at the community college level. And it's very inexpensive. Steve knows one of your kids goes to the community, or did go to the community college system,
All
right?
3 went there.
Yeah, there you go. So it does such a fantastic job. It's also for people who just want to go back and maybe get a certificate or learn a skill, so not everybody's going the 4-year track. A large percentage of the students, though, do transfer to a 4-year institution. So it's still such a great system, but it is changing. The other thing about that is there's a fair amount of homeless students that are in the community college system, much higher than you would think. Maybe 15, I heard 20% 5 years ago, maybe. And again, those are people that could be living out of their cars. In case in point, I had a student who was just not responding, and if they don't respond by a certain date, usually within the first couple weeks, we're required to drop them because they don't want them getting financial aid and not taking classes. So anyway, I didn't hear from the student, and then he finally reached out to me and said, hey, I'm really struggling, I'm having some difficulties, and my guidance counselor said to talk to you. And so we met on a Zoom meeting. He was on his phone, which, by the way, most of my students, I think, are actually going through college on their phone. They don't have a laptop. Maybe 40% have a laptop. The rest are taking classes on their phone. Crazy enough. So we talked for a few minutes, and he said, I've been homeless for 7 years. Can you work with me? So I was like, yeah, of course. Unfortunately, he still hasn't really made it. So it's helping people like that get through a program. That is like a huge reward for me. Not all of them do. University of Learn, I was just telling you guys about that one. So again, they've got the main campus, but they have all the satellite campuses. And so they do a great job of getting people, working adults through the system as well. And a lot of them, the employer pays for their education. So that's a great deal. And then the last one here, again, Chapman, traditional programs, grad, undergrad. I think they might even have PhD programs, I'm not sure. But a lot of really good energy there. I'm super impressed with the campus. The business building itself, which is the Beckman building. Of course, Beckman, one of the big employers here in the county for 60 years, something like that. Every single class, the next instructor is waiting to get in. That building gets utilized, and it's a 4-story building. Building gets utilized from morning until 10 o'clock at night. That's how many people are going through that system. So it's very, very impressive. I could be having the worst day in the corporate world, and I could go into the classroom and really get energized by the students, working on projects together. So that's why I've stuck with it. All right. Then I started this little boutique services business. Okay. And permitting, mobile notary services, and what I'll call authentications. I'm either getting documents authenticated with the Secretary of State's office or the U.S. Department of State. So they're either state or federal authentications. I've talked about those. We won't talk about those so much today, but these two right here keep me pretty busy during the month. Particularly that one, and I'll add to that here in a second. But, you know, again, what do I add? I really bring convenience. It's like Paul was talking here, you know, they're going to need somebody for advanced healthcare directive and things like that. A couple times a month at least, I will go to a hospital, a home perhaps, for people that need to update their trust. They need advanced healthcare directive signed, something like that. They're not able to go to a UPS store, stand in line with a bunch of people with boxes in their hands behind them, and get those notarized. So I do that more and more. It's kind of interesting, and then, you know, it feels like a ministry almost, you know, because you're really helping people with an important document. So between those two, I do a lot there. Paul will generally send me out at least once or twice a month on some interesting errands there. And I brought that book. I'm going to go get it afterwards. It's the surfer guy. What was his name? Barry?
Oh yeah, Barry.
What's his last name? Do you remember?
You got a client that.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember
Anyway, this guy was a legend in the surf film industry, if you will. So he brought the surfing championships to Puerto Rico in 1969 as shortboards were longboards were transitioning to the shortboard. So super interesting guy. So anyway, you meet all sorts of interesting people out there. Okay, now this is what I wanted to share, and I'm going to blame Pierre partly for this one. So, lessons I've learned in my career. You know, over 40 years, there's certain things that kind of stick with you. It's like, hey, what was an important takeaway that I learned from this? And, you know, and this is always on the positive side. So I thought of three that I thought would be worth sharing. The first one is, the information you need is buried in the data. That information that you're probably looking for, it's somewhere in-house. It's either in your accounting department, your accounts payable, your accounts receivable, which I'll share here in a second. But it's somewhere in your organization. It's through your receipts, something that you want to know. Hey, is there a part of my business that's really growing that I need to pay more attention to? You know, maybe it's bigger than I thought it was. Maybe it's not profitable. Maybe I need to make it more profitable. But whatever, it's probably inside the four walls of your business. The other one I'm going to share here is, no doesn't necessarily mean no, and I'm not talking about dating here. No doesn't necessarily mean no, just talk to people. And then the last one is the one I want to share with you guys and maybe kind of open it up into maybe a workshop format. But customer problems are opportunities to increase satisfaction. First one. So the information you need is buried in the data. 20-something years ago, I was asked to do a consulting assignment for Black & Decker. I think they're now owned by Stanley Tools. I think Stanley bought them several years ago. But Black & Decker and Price Feaster are down in Lake Forest. And so through an association that I used to go to, I was asked if I could help them with this kind of interesting assignment. And it was basically the CFO and the director of customer service had me in their office, and they said, hey, we don't know why, but we got a lot of customers that are short paying invoices. And we want to try and figure out, you know, because it seems higher than normal, but we don't even know what the percentage is. Help us understand, is this higher than higher than it should be? And if so, why? What's causing it? Give us some recommendations. I said, great, I'm up for this assignment. And so I ended up using statistical process, which, by the way, I barely got through statistics. By the hair of my chinny chin did I get through statistics. So a guy like me using that tool just shows you just never know. But anyway, I did come to find out, I took, they sent me into this room. It was maybe about the size of this room, full of boxes of invoices. And they said, okay, here's where the information is. And I was like, wow. It was sort of like Indiana Jones in that warehouse, right? It's like, hey, what do I do with this? But anyway, I ended up randomly selecting a fairly good size population of invoices over a year's period, and found out, hey, it's 20% of their invoices are getting short paid because there's an error on it. So customers were pissed off. They were right. They knew something was wrong. So then it was a matter of, okay, what kind of an error is it? And, come to find out, it was a lot of things where the salesperson would automatically say, hey, you get automatic 5% off on that invoice, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. So there was promises made, but the system wasn't allowing for that discount. So they were short paying because they were saying, hey, I didn't get my 5% discount. The other ones were that they weren't updating their systems electronically with the latest price list. So they were operating from old price lists. So there's a few reasons there. I kind of gave them a few categories. I said, look, it's this, and this. And then I said, you might have a little bit of a complicated, tiered pricing strategy too. You might want to just streamline this a little bit. So they did. They ended up doing it. I made some really good money on that consulting assignment. And it was a big lesson for me is don't be intimidated. The data is definitely in the four walls of the business. It's in there somewhere. You just got to know where to look and what threads to pull. The other one we had was most recently. So when I came to Epson 12 years ago, I was the product manager. We had 0 sales in this business. We made desktop label printers that made packaging labels. So, this technically is considered a packaging label. It's just a label on a product or whatever. So these desktop labelers. So we started the business. We had $0, in sales, and over 12 years we became like a $25 million, $30 million business. So, over time we built the business. But the thing that the management team was always harping on us about is, hey, it seems like everybody just buys one. Why can't we sell multiple numbers of units to customers? What's wrong with you guys? And once again, we looked at the data over several years, and we began to find out, actually the same customer's buying one here, another one 6 months later, another one. So over time, those customers, we found out that 60% of our customers owned multiple units. So once again, the data's there. If you just look at it, if you know what to do, if you have the energy and the mental strength to go find it and do the analysis, you'll be probably pleasantly surprised. And then the last one here, this one wasn't hard. This one I was just looking at my sales data and I said, wow, permitting part of my business really seems to be emerging here as a, more and more. So the other one, no doesn't necessarily mean no. This is the one that Pierre kind of inspired me with. So the first one I want to mention is I worked for GE Capital for a couple of years back in the 90s, and that is one crazy company to work for. I never met more jerks in my life, and I never met more talented, gifted managers that you would say, I want to work on his team or her team. That is like a very talented, inspiring person. So that company had both. I learned a lot in a very short period of time, but I got an opportunity. We leased, those temporary buildings that you see out there all the time. So that was was in the leasing division. And so Anheuser-Busch out there in Houston, Texas, where I was living at the time, Said, hey, you know, we need a big multiple complex out here. We got a big project going on. We're bringing on a new blend of beer. And, you know, so we have to have engineers and all these people on site to build this complex to add this product line to our brewery. And so I walked out of there, you know, just, man, I've got a big deal. Went to my manager. Wow, you won't believe what deal we got. You know, this is going to be great. And then the next day I had a conversation, a phone call with the procurement agent. And this guy ripped me left and right. And we're never going to sign that lease document. We would never, look at that section. We'll never sign that. And I left that phone call thinking, well, there goes that deal. So I called my boss immediately, you know, and I go, hey, Jonathan, this deal's like, it's in the toilet, you know, I don't know what happened. And he goes, no, don't worry. He's going to talk to our vice president. And I was like, well, God, this guy's with Anheuser-Busch, you know? And he kind of looked at me like, yeah, but we're GE. We're way bigger. I was like, okay. So I'm still thinking, okay, I got my vice president involved in some conversation. He's going to think I'm incompetent. How come you can't handle this? So I joined the conference call. Here's the procurement agent that the day before, you know, had the boxing gloves on with me and was really ripping me left and right. Now he's talking to our area vice president. And he is so sweet and nice. Our vice president's name is, right? It was all positioning.
Yeah.
It was all positioning. And so it's, you know, he's talking to our vice president, Mike. Oh, Mike, it's so good to talk to you. Thanks for making this call, blah-de, blah-de, blah. And so, you know, Mike says, hey, thanks for making the time. Let's go down the sections. Let's look at this lease doc. So we go down section number 1. You know, the one that he was most violently objected to. And he goes, hey, it says here that you guys want to say that you would own our building when we lease it to you? Once it's on your property, that's your property? Well, we can't agree to that. Oh yeah, no, that, you're right. We'll strike that part. Every red line that he had for that lease contract, every single one. Oh yeah, okay. So at the end of the day, we leased it. We didn't change but maybe one tiny thing in that lease contract. That guy was Mr. Sweetie. You know, again, it was all positioning. So when I say no doesn't necessarily mean no. You got to talk to people. So my next one, this is the one that inspired this bullet point. So I was doing a permit for a PR. It was an ADU project in Mission Viejo. And Mission Viejo appears to have had several new building techs, you know, the clerks at the front desk. They seem to be on the newer side. And so I think some of the people that have been there a lot longer are probably in the back office or maybe out in the field more. And so we kept getting this list of corrections, you know, from planning, from building, kept going back and forth. And so finally Pierre calls or lets me know. He says, hey, look, call me when you get in line. And when we go up to the counter to talk, he goes, I want to talk to him. So we go up there and we get a younger gal who probably doesn't have as much experience, and she was very belligerent. You know, and Pierre said, hey, look, I just want to talk to planning. I want to talk to somebody to understand what all these corrections, you know, these don't all make sense to me. Sorry, sir, there's too many of them to talk here at the window, so you're either going to have to make another appointment or take this with you. Which one do you want to do? And he kept going back and forth. Which one do you want to do, sir? So she was very abrupt, and we left. And then he says, see if you can get me an appointment with the inspector and with the planning supervisor. And I thought, that's pretty smart, but I have some serious doubts the way we were treated today. We're going to get that appointment, but okay, if you say so. So I go back, make an appointment, and I go to the front desk, and the lady said, I said, hey, I want to make an appointment with the inspector and want to make an appointment with the planning supervisor. And of course, that person there at the front desk was like, oh, well, yeah, we don't normally do that. And she looks back at the building tech, she goes, he wants to get an appointment with the inspector and the planning supervisor. And the lady goes, yeah, well, we do that all the time. I was like, yes, we're in. So I sent an email to the people that they said to send an email to, which was both those parties and another individual. One person replied back, hey, I don't think you need me in this meeting, but I do think you need to talk to so-and-so. She was the planning supervisor. So she calls me and says, look, I'm training people because we're going to a new online submission system. I'm only available today. So if you can get your contractor. So I literally did a 3-way call. I got the 2 of them on the phone, and Pierre says, look, how about if I come in at 11 o'clock today? She's like, great. Man, problem solved. All because we talked to people. And so again, no doesn't necessarily mean no. It's just, you really gotta talk to people, and it can't usually be through emails, it can't be through text, and you need to go, a lot of times it's when that face-to-face thing, or at least a conference call. That was a really good learning experience for me, because we had sort of a similar thing going on here. So I'm working on one with Simon in Long Beach. It's a multiple ADU unit. This is the one that I got a Google search, just an organic Google search for a multiple ADU project in Long Beach. So the first time we tried to go in and submit, we were sent home with homework. Not the way you want to start, but sometimes that happens. We went back in last week, and the lady started off with a list of things that we didn't have, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going home with homework again, and this thing's not getting submitted yet. And so the more questions she asked, the more objections she had. The more I said things, the more objections she had. So I just kind of sat there, and as I sat there, she began to work on the permit. I could tell she was working on it. And I thought we were going to get sent home, but instead it was, okay, now you're going to go talk to these guys, then you're going to come back and talk to me, and then you're going to pay for your permit. I'm thinking, okay, we're in business again. So sometimes they're telling you no right there, you're not going to get this, but they're actually just kind of talking out loud in their head, and they are going to give it to you. So sometimes you got to just sit there patiently and just nod your head, So anyway, that thing got submitted. We'll wait for corrections, but you don't always know. They say no, and they don't always mean that. And then this is the last one I wanted to give. So sometimes you're going to run into, and I've run into some problems where it just seems like there is no way to fix this. Customer is extremely unhappy. Everyone's pointing fingers, could be at your subs, it could be whoever it is. And so in my career in the printing technology business, I had a few that stuck out over the years. Many years ago, we went to Wells Dairy. Wells Dairy is in Iowa, and they make Blue Bunny ice cream, and you'll see those at, like, I think Angel Stadium maybe has Blue Bunny ice cream, and a lot of big concessions and things like that. They even have it in the grocery store, I think. These guys had just a crazy thing where, when they make ice cream, it's actually 6 months old by the time it gets to us. Not unusual, because it's frozen at -40. So they make it and then they store it at -40 in warehouses and all that stuff. -40 to have a label stick to a paper container, that's not an easy thing to do. And so people that make labels have to develop, I call it a witch's brew of adhesives that will stick at -40. So they were like, hey, your product doesn't work, come get it. Was one of those things. We went out there, and come to find out it wasn't our product, it was actually the label company was not making the right adhesive. But the fact that we showed up, they realized they had some culpability in that too. And so we ended up with a really happy customer because we showed up, even though they were not happy. The other one was many years ago when we first started, we had another opportunity. McKesson, who's a big healthcare services and products provider, they were using one of our first color printers on one of their anesthesia cards. And same thing, hey, this is not working. You guys got to come fix it. And it literally this went on for a little over a week, maybe almost 2. It was Super Bowl weekend. And they were like, you guys better come out here and fix this thing. So we said, okay, we're gonna travel on Super Bowl Sunday. So we flew on Super Bowl Sunday through Dallas-Fort Worth to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was having their once in a 20-year storm, so that half the city was shut down. The hotel that the Marriott we were supposed to stay at had, all the cars had like 3 feet of snow on top of them. Our Marriott was shut down because of the power went out, so we had to go to another Marriott. Long story short, Monday morning we show up at 8 o'clock at their office. Nobody's there. We were like, hello, anybody back there? Some guy comes out, and we were like, hey, we're looking for so-and-so. Oh, no, she didn't come in today. Does she know you're coming? So we went to her desk, called her from her desk. We said, hey, we're here. And she's like, oh, I forgot you were coming. And I don't even know if I can get in. And we ended up working with an engineer who happened to be in the office that day. And once again, we had a customer for life. And that customer, even though they sold this division, that customer became the biggest printer customer for our division over the last 12 years, and probably still will be. Nobody even touches them with the dollars that they've spent with the company on that. All because, we went and met with them and we talked with them. So even if they're blazing mad, show up and they will be happy that you came. I'm not even gonna tell you about the last one because that one's too many stories. So now this is what I wanted to share. This is kind of where I'm at with my business. So thank you, everybody. Great feedback. Thank you.